Shalom. So I am waiting for Chris and his beautiful wife. I actually don't know if she's beautiful. I'm guessing she's beautiful. I've never seen her. There was the picture in the thumbnail, um, and she's beautiful. But they have a baby, and having a baby, I expected them to be at least a few minutes late. Uh, because that's what happens when you have a baby. Ah! There's Chris! I'm just not sure if he's ready for me to put him on yet.
Can you hear
Hey,
me?
Chris. I can hear you. Can you hear
What's
me?
up? My boy woke up, so my wife's just putting him down again.
Well, as I was telling our beautiful audience, I'm sure your beautiful wife has to deal with having a beautiful baby boy that's like 3 months old.
Yeah, dude. She made a really cute video of him on Instagram with him like laughing and dressed up as like a lion. It's really cute.
Well,
What are
I'm
you
I'm
drinking? It looks
sure.
like you're drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels. Oh, surely. Just as
Uh,
good. Even better.
I am sure you are being completely impartial when you say your baby boy is cute.
Oh, I don't like so we have a friend and it's really cool because she already has two kids, but she had her babe. She's really good friends with Sarah, and had her baby before ours. So they're basically like have like going through all stages of newbornness and whatever together. And like, I love my baby, but I feel nothing for that baby. Well, like babies are
Spoken
like,
like a true father.
well, babies are like aliens. Like they really are. Like they're not actually very cute. Like my son, like you also have to catch a baby in the right mood and get to, I think if you get to know any baby, you'll like him, you'll start to like them. But I don't know about you, but like my first instinct with a was just like a crying baby or something can be off-putting.
I actually love babies, but I understand many people do not. I have a lot more patience with babies than most people do. Um, just just because I also think there is this thing that when it's your baby and your baby is crying, like there's something primal in your response to that. Um, so Chad says, keep that kid away from Sam Harris.
Who's Sam Harris? Didn't that
Uh,
is that guy that died the other week, like last week?
he didn't
Didn't he
die.
didn't he die of suicide? Didn't he choke on his
He
own foot in his own mouth?
he did choke on his foot, and I thought it was very presumptuous of you to make that video saying that God forgives Sam Harris, because I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
what, what
So
what
what
is
did he
your
do?
theological justification for the idea that God forgives Sam Harris? I don't see
Oh,
it.
I have none. But what? So why like so basically like one thing about Christianity that's interesting is like because you talk about like one whatever three being one is the same thing as two plus two equals five, and like
Hmm.
we talk about how like we Christianity is this leap away from logic, and like so and so do you think like so what would be the Jewish take on Sam Harris's um um whatever his what happens when Sam dies? He just goes to hell. Is that it?
Well, okay, I do have to say, in Judaism, um,
I'm fine with that, by the
basically
way.
you have to be a really, really, really horrible person in Judaism to be to merit going to hell. Like, you have to work for
Okay.
it. Um, and generally we would say that if you're just an ignoramus, then you're not good enough to get into hell. You know, our idea
You know,
of our default position is it takes skill. It takes skill to merit your way into hell.
so Sam Harris is probably too dumb. This is Sarah.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi, you
Nice meeting you.
yeah, nice meeting you as well. I've heard a lot about you.
Oh, oy vey. What did he
So,
say?
so the Bridges of Meaning Discord is where all the Christians fight, and this is Jacob the Jew, and he comes to tell all the Christians why they're wrong.
Yeah, you converted my husband. Now he's going to hell.
He is? Are you going to hell, Chris?
If,
Thanks,
if
thanks,
there's
Jacob.
hope, if there's hope for Sam Harris,
Jacob, don't you know about Jesus?
I do know about Jesus. I know a lot about Jesus.
that's why we
And
set up this conversation.
Yeah,
We want to talk to you about this
hold
wonderful man.
hold on. But the two of you went to Joel Osteen's church. And from
Yeah.
what I hear, anybody
last Sunday we
who
went.
listens to Joel Osteen like automatically goes to hell.
sorry. On that note, my baby woke up.
Should I
So,
rock him and you can talk to him?
yeah, he'll probably go to sleep better for you. Um, so, so everybody who goes to Joel Osteen's church goes to hell.
I'm joking, but like in our circles, everybody constantly makes fun of Joel Osteen.
I think just the people that hide the money in the wall at his church go to hell.
Okay.
I think that's just it. Hold on, I gotta turn off the fan. Give me 1 second.
Okay. The god of algorithms forgives Sam. Yes, yes. The god of algorithms is an atheist. We've noticed.
Alright, hopefully you can hear me better. It's hard to hear you. Yeah, only the people that put the money in the wall. That's it.
I know very little about Joel Osteen. I just know that like when I read the Babylon Bee, anytime they mention him, he's like the Antichrist, and
Yeah.
at least in our circles, like how much do you read anything on Bridges of Meaning? Do you listen to any of these videos, or is this just crazy
Yep.
stuff your husband does?
Yeah, just what Chris shows me is the only thing I'll do.
Okay.
So he's he's a entrepreneur is kind of how I look at him, really.
Okay.
He's smart and he's made money with his church, and yeah,
Do you mind if I get invasive and like ask about your background and how you met Chris and all that stuff and what it's like being a mother and
Yeah.
who you are?
Yeah, okay, which question do you want first?
Shh, take it as you like it.
Okay, well,
You froze.
I'm in Bible school.
You
Still froze?
You froze. Okay, you're good now.
Okay.
Start again. Go ahead.
So, I met Chris kind of in Bible school. Like, he wasn't going to Bible school. He was visiting a friend because he had went there the year before. And then I convinced him to move back to North Carolina. But, so that's like a whole long story in itself. And maybe we'll get into it, I don't know. But it's a very long story. I'll save that one for when Chris is here if you want to talk about it. And then
what's your background as far as like how were you raised? Were you born again? What do you think of Jesus?
I was raised in me and Chris were raised the same way, right? So we were raised in like that very evangelical background.
Okay.
So like real weird. Have you seen some of that stuff with Todd Bentley?
Well, I know a little bit. Were you guys charismatic? Like, were you speaking in tongues and were you handling snakes?
No, didn't handle snakes. But
Glad to
speaking
hear it.
in tongues, believed in like all the gifts of the spirit and
Okay.
like real like loud, obnoxious kind of this is kind of what I say to people like my church, there's always that one divorced lady up at front with a flag
Okay.
and then someone with like a rain stick, like it was just weird, but it was very I kind of I hate it and I loved it because I felt like there's like real spiritual experiences that you can have. I don't
Hmm.
know if it's just with like God in like the Jesus sense. Well, I know I don't think it is just that or like whatever, right? But I think you can connect with, I think you can have a psychedelic experience through religion. And
Hmm.
I think that evangelical people have they've found a formula for that. And that's pretty much all they do. And so
Mm.
in that way, I think that it was good because I had very real experiences in really crappy times in my life. Other than that, I think it gets kind of really nasty too on the other side. So that's interesting and how I
What
process
do you mean
that.
nasty? Like, in what ways?
Well, you have people that are, I mean, there's a lot of like, I think church in general though, but I think more so in these environments, you have people that are, I'm trying to figure out how to word it, but like a lot of the like rules go out the window. Like religion comes with a set of rules that you should follow, right? Like
Hmm.
that's kind of what religion is. And a lot of the rules go out the window and a lot of stuff happens
Hmm.
and people are there's you should be following rules. I don't know how like kind of to put it, but like you can't just throw everything out the window just because Jesus forgives the sinner. It doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want and be whoever you want and not try to be better. And just because you have an experience with God where He forgives you every Sunday
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you're able to. Like, I don't know if you know Bethel Church, but like they
I've
had this
heard
book.
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had this book. Me and Chris started reading it, and we kind of stopped reading it, but basically they were talking about how they forgive the school pastor for sleeping with a student. And it's like a whole long story, but basically it like goes into all the bad things he did, but how they still forgive him. And when you read the book, you realize like, no, like he needs to like learn, like he needs consequences for his actions. And
Right.
so in that church environment, there's no consequences for actions. It's just that kind of, I mean, I would probably call it like that psychedelic experience that you have with, that you can have from a religion, and then that's it. There's no grounding that makes you a better person because they don't necessarily believe it's necessary.
So has Chris told you anything about me and St. Paul?
No,
Okay.
maybe it's been a while.
So I'm famous for my rants about St. Paul, who's not one of my favorites, and I don't generally call
Yeah,
him a saint.
yeah,
Um, because part of it is for me kind of like that Matthew 7, Jesus says a good tree bears good fruit and a bad tree bears bad fruit. And so, like, if somebody is repentant and God knows, like, I need forgiveness more than most people, um, I think there's something really important about that. At the same time, like, if you're telling me that Paul was, like, murdering people and persecuting the church and he's repentant, my understanding of that would be okay, so he's repentant, he gets to come, maybe we'll let him into the church, but he doesn't get to become the leader of the church. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like you have to, you still go to the back of the line behind the people who actually, lived a good life until now. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. And the story of Jesus, part of the story of Jesus is that he forgives the sinners of all their sins, right? And I think that there's something really beautiful about that, because you don't want to forgive yourself. Like, you know it's bad, and you don't want to forgive yourself until someone else forgives you, and you realize, like, if someone just tells you like it doesn't matter and you could just start over today, that's like a really powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you on there needs to be more than that, and like there are like, if you like spent your entire life trying to be a good Christian and then that doesn't matter compared to the guy who just said today he's going to start being a better person, like that doesn't really mean much as far as what that person is saying until it's been proven through hardship, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one thing it's kind of
You broke up again.
night, and we went to this kind of evangelical church music night the other
It was
night.
like Pentecostal.
Yeah, and
These guys don't like Pentecostal.
yeah. Oh, okay.
That's all right.
I like it all, so I mean, I don't really
They
care.
don't like anything fun.
Shut up. But like one thing I said to Chris is like, it's a really good church for drug addicts. Like, it's a really good church for people who like had no other option other than to be on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was their saving grace, right? And in that way, I think it's really powerful, and I like it for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. There's definitely the importance of, you know, forgiveness and repentance and the power of change in a person's life. At the same time, yeah, I think a lot of people would say that this is particularly where, especially in our little corner of the internet, I think part of the reason so many people are moving away from Protestant theology
Yeah.
more towards Catholic and Eastern Orthodoxy is because they're like, no, it's not, sola fide in that incredible, like, okay, I don't need to do any penance. I don't need to change things, right? In order to there is such a thing as a process of sanctification that you go through your life trying to become a better and better person. So,
Yeah, and that's interesting. I don't know much about it because Chris took me to a Orthodox church. I kind of like just got mad because I was just sitting there and like I don't know what they're saying. They're not speaking in English, and they keep standing up and sitting down and standing up and sitting down. And I'm like, this is just like annoying to me. But
was it a Greek Orthodox church? What kind was it?
yeah,
Russian?
Orthodox.
Greek
Yeah.
Orthodox? Yeah. Yeah, I can especially imagine going from a charismatic background to walking into an Eastern Orthodox church that isn't even speaking English would be a huge leap. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
You guys actually live like in the epicenter of the Noahide movement and Messianic Judaism. So I was wondering if you've had any experience with that or anything, or
In
that
Houston?
hasn't. Yeah, kind of. So that Texas, Houston. I don't know if Houston so much. I don't know Texas that well, but definitely Texas. I think Dallas and Austin are pretty far off from Houston, aren't they? They're like a couple of hours off.
A couple hours. Dallas is 4, I think.
Is it 4?
And then Austin's 2, I think. Yeah, Austin's 2. But, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys aren't incredibly far from each other, and I don't know exactly where. Like, there's a channel, there's a YouTube channel which is basically the YouTube channel for the Noahide movement mostly, and the guy who runs it, it's called Tanakh Talk, and he lives in Kingston, I believe. Tanakh.
Isn't it?
There's a King Wood. I don't know about King Stan. I don't know.
Let me. I am trying to quickly find this, so I'm not talking out of my behind as much as I usually do.
5 hours away.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Dallas area, like outskirts.
If
Dallas.
I drive 5 hours and God isn't there, man.
No,
We're paying
I
for
wasn't.
gas
I
money.
wasn't actually necessarily recommending it. It's just. It's funny that like Messianic Judaism has become kind of. Well, first of all, I have to say Messianic Judaism isn't Judaism. They're basically just Baptists, but they're
Oh, interesting.
their churches are modeled after synagogues, and they include a lot of Hebrew, and like you'll see the people with the shofars and with all kinds of Jewish rituals and stuff. And for some reason, Texas has become like the epicenter of that. Although there's a lot of it throughout the South, actually, the Bible Belt and stuff. Yeah.
We got shofars in the Pentecostal churches. We got lots of shofars, lots of the blankets.
The
Yeah, I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
They've always got those.
But what they do with them,
They'll always have anointing oil. Always lots of it. My grandma was Catholic turned Pentecostal, and she anointed me with anointing oil every night I'd stay with her house. Always was anointed with oil. Yeah.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
she loved you and she wanted to protect you.
It seems like the Pentecostal churches like there's some type of like weird thing where the Pentecostal churches, because they've read the church fathers too, and I think it's because the biggest accusation against the Pentecostals is they have no like spiritual foundation because they're all airy-fairy, and so I think because of that they have like a very incoherent but like pieced together. So like they pull out the anointing oil and the shofar and all this stuff from Jewish, stuff, and like they just piece it together, and like this is what they did back then.
But I mean, there is, and I was talking to Michael and his wife about this. There is a, and Michael lives in Texas too, actually.
Yeah.
But there is a real desire for ritual among Protestants, and generally they don't want to do the Catholic thing because it's Catholic, and that's like the that's like Satan, right? So there has been a lot of turning towards Jewish things in ways that are sometimes a tiny bit comical. Like the shofars are always like the longest, biggest shofars I've never seen in an actual synagogue, and they're like bejeweled in interesting ways. But now that I have both of you, how has having a baby changed your life and your faith?
How has it changed my life and changed my faith?
Is Chris a better person than he was before the baby was born? That's a leading question.
Yeah, I mean, I think how has changed having a baby changed my faith?
I can go. So how it's changed me and my faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's changed me because I feel like on your worst day, like you get this horrible feeling, like your worst day ever. It's just these horrible feeling, right? As long as he's there on my worst day, like it's a happy day, and like that is really cool because it's like it's just insane amount of love, and it's just an amazing feeling. And then as far as it's changed my faith, it's very like for me, it's not just having a baby that's changed my faith. It's like the fact I couldn't have a baby for 7 years. I don't know if Chris told you this, but we could not have kids.
Oh.
And it took us 7 years to have him, and I have a ton of medical diagnosis that would prevent me from having a kid ever.
Oh
So
wow.
he's my little miracle baby, and like I would always see 1111 everywhere. And when I was 21, I think, maybe 22, before we ever started trying to have a baby, my friend came up to me and she showed me like the verse, Hebrews 11:11, which I mean, I guess you wouldn't know that verse, but it basically
Yeah.
said Sarah had faith and she conceived. Yeah, you can look it up.
Hebrews 11:11. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised.
Yeah. And like that just, I held on to that verse for like 7 years, hated it, loved it, everything in between, really. And then I finally got pregnant after all of that time. And that's changed my faith because I know that no matter what happens, or like you can be in the longest, what do you call it, like wilderness or whatever, and it will end, and you can just hold on to that faith and that hope that it's not meant to be forever, and that's changed my faith a lot. Like no matter what happens, I know, like I just look at him and he's a reminder that like God's good.
I I mean, it sounds absolutely beautiful. So is are you guys living near family? Is your family involved? Has it been really important to have family while you're taking care of the baby? That's one of the things that. So in this corner of the internet, I've been trying to kind of uh, each one of us, I guess, kind of has a message, and one part of my message has been we're not atomized individuals. We're actually human beings that live with other human beings, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to have the two of you on together. Um, but also, I mean, it seems to me that, especially when you have a kid, but like having your family involved in your life is just such an important thing that we kind of we kind of had this idea of a nuclear family and like keeping family out, outside influences out, and just wanted to hear your thoughts on that and how that's been affected by having a baby.
Um, her family's kind of without saying too much, just not around. And my dad passed. My mom is stuck in Canada because she can't get into the country because she's not vaccinated. She wants to come, but it's
Wow,
just not
that's hard.
happening. She's tried and hasn't worked out. So that's that. And then other than that, we're just kind of building a family. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
We just moved here 2 years ago and been working like crazy, but we've got a couple friends and whatnot. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I was just telling you about our one friend who they had babies at the same time, and so that's been really cool. They've been doing that together, and there's been so many cool people that like, especially you've met along the way, who like came to your baby shower, hosted the baby shower, and threw a great baby shower for you,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
those types of things. So it's we're yeah we're be nice to have my mom or some more. It'd be nice to have more people around, but it is what it is. We're making it
Yeah,
work.
I mean, there would be definitely. I think family is very important, and I think having a kid makes you realize how important family is. But the way I look at it is, I really can't sit around and think about how I'd want my family here, right? Like,
Hmm.
what I can do is do my best to cultivate
We
family
kind of
over.
lost you. You said
You got,
what I can do is cultivate, and then we lost you.
yeah, cultivate that for my son, like,
Hmm.
and have that for my family,
Mm-hmm.
even though like the one that I can control, right? My husband, my kid, like I can control that atmosphere
Mm-hmm.
and how we handle situations, but I can't control my parents.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so my goal is to use that as fuel to be better. And
Ha-
that's the way I look at it. Because I do think family's super important, and having a kid without family there is really hard, extremely hard. And on like so many levels, so many levels.
yeah.
But you can do it. Like it's doable. It's
Yeah.
definitely doable. But I want to create an atmosphere in my home where my kids, when they have kids, can feel like I'm there.
Has church been a part of that? Have you been meeting people through church, and has like these friends that you are making? What is the mechanism? How are you finding these friends to
Me and Chris. Okay, this is why we like Joel Osteen's church. Okay, because there are certain things you like about the event, like or like Protestant, I guess is the right word. Protestant, and there's a lot of things we don't like. And we really like the worship, and we like the sermon. Like, to be honest, okay. And so what we like about Joel Osteen's church is you can go in. There's way too many people to be noticed, and you can leave. And no one is weird, right? Like, and you don't have to talk to anybody. But what I will say is, having a kid, I want to have more of a community, and I think we're like, we went to that one church worship thing, and we went to a couple churches, and so I think there is a bit.
Yeah, we've gone to a lot of churches at this point.
Yeah, I think there's some in us.
But we always come back to Joel. We always like
Yeah.
Joel.
But I think we're searching for that church community now.
It'd be nice if we could find it. We're kind of losing hope, but it'd be nice to find something.
Yeah.
Well, that last church is cool, I guess. But
We'll see. Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know what you guys talked about, but we met in like Bible school at that like Pentecostal like whatever, like a Bible school, and like I don't know, it was a pretty big church. You see behind the curtain of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And you kind of see how things are ran, and how and what I have an endless list of ways I think the church could be better, but it's also not an easy thing to run either. So maybe an impossible thing to run, actually. Probably an impossible thing to run.
I wonder if the Jewish faith and like Orthodox and stuff run it better, because what we didn't like we've seen tithes that didn't go where they were supposed to go. Like they would take up a tithe, say they were giving it to children in Haiti, and my friend
I wish
he's like, that didn't come. That money did not get to us.
I just wish I could tell you that like it is much better. What part of my
boring.
You gotta be good at something.
part of my experience has been that human beings are human beings wherever you go, and in some places, like I'm not gonna say it's all the same, because it's not, because I do
people
think
are all the same.
I think your ideas, I think your theology does affect how it causes you to be better or worse. And so I do believe that there is an effect which changes people either for better or for worse if they have good or bad theology. At the same time, human beings will never stop being human beings, and that's it's kind of like when I read one of the, I would say the most Jewish thing Jesus said was in Mark 12, where they ask him, what's the most important commandment? And he says, to love God, the Lord our God, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your might and all your soul. And the second one is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And those two, they go together. And I have to say, I think the second one is a lot harder than the first one, because it seems to me it's easier to love God as this, perfect and ideal thing than it is to love human beings. And like, sometimes I think about, like, would I hang around with myself if like there was two of me? Like, how much would I criticize myself, and would I just like think of myself as being too toxic to, like, oh, this guy, he's always um contradicting people, and like, I'm a very intense person, and like, I'm not a very good friend, and it's like, I don't know if I would be friends with me if like I was someone other than me. Like, I'm not like, I look at myself and I'm like, yeah, I'm not an axe murderer, so I'm not gonna say like I'm like the chief of sinners or the worst of people or anything like that. Obviously, there are far worse people than me, and I think I'm tolerable. At the same time, like, I'm kind of difficult to deal with and stuff like that, and so I think that has kind of allowed me to maybe have more of a genuine love for people than I would have if like I actually was the type of person who like behaved how I think I should behave. I think if I was a better person, I might actually be even more insufferable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't get what you mean.
Well, I think what he's saying is, if you had more perfection, you'd think more highly of yourself, and then therefore be even harder to get along with. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like if I wasn't a lazy bum and I like exercised and I was a good friend and I like sent Christmas cards to everybody and wasn't wasting my time, was actually like a saintly person, like, then I think maybe I would be even like more critical. And I'm a very critical person. Like, I'm sure Chris has told you, like, I I am critical of everything and everyone constantly, but at the very least, I'm critical enough of myself to not be like full of myself. I hope. Although I am arrogant. But yeah, enough about me.
I mean, if you can even acknowledge that you're arrogant, I feel like you're self-aware enough to not be always arrogant, at least, right?
Right. So this is my whole thing. Like, one of the things I dislike about Calvinists and like the people who go around, I am the chief of sinners. It's like, you don't actually believe that, because you know about like Jeffrey Dahmer, and my person who I want to be known as worse than Jeffrey Dahmer. His name is Mark Chiavarella. He was like a judge, and gave lots of money to charities and stuff like that, and he was caught like taking bribes to send little kids to private prisons. Like, the private prison was giving him money, and he was like sending 8-year-olds to these like child whatchamacallit, rehabilitation places. And it's like, okay, nothing I have ever done in my life approaches like anything like that. I haven't murdered anybody. I've never, taken bribes to like kidnap children. I'm not a horrible person, In fact, I think I'm an okay person, but at the same time, it's like I'm not like a great son. Like I don't call, I'm not a great person. I'm an okay person. And so when somebody says to me the Calvinist thing of like, oh, I'm totally depraved and like I'm the worst of sinners, and it's like you don't believe that. You don't believe that. You're just being dishonest, and so your confession, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty meaningless unless you're actually like there are bodies in the backyard. Um, it just seems false to me.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that a lot of people, this is something I've been thinking about, like with since COVID. I guess you can't say the C word on the internet.
It's okay.
um, so what I've been thinking about is everybody. I think most people probably believe what they're saying.
When they say I'm the worst of sinners, really?
I
No, she's saying
wonder,
in general, people believe what they say.
and I wonder, yeah, I wonder
Just
when
whether you think masks work or not, you believe that.
and whether there's any logic behind it.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know what I'm saying? Like, and
Yeah.
so I think that they're not saying that, saying like, I'm the worst of sinners. And then they think that like, because what does that even get you by saying that? Other than like maybe you're extra humble or you have extra humility, and then maybe then you're like, he's so humble, and maybe that's why he's doing it. But I think most people believe that they like if they say that, I think they believe that. Like I do think that about people.
Well, you believe your lies, right? Like,
Yeah.
like it.
Uh, you
Was
froze up.
You can't remember
did
what
I
it
cut out?
was. Yeah,
You
just
cut out.
Um,
Yeah.
I can't remember where I heard it, but basically, I mean, it's just a simple. It was a much more eloquent way of saying the same thing as you tell a lie long enough and you start to believe it. But it was a
Yeah.
much more eloquent way of saying it. But I think that most of the time, yeah, people. If we could see our contradictions, we wouldn't have them. You know,
Right. So that's part of the thing. I especially think people who like are computer programmers, they think that especially people who talk about cognitive dissonance. I don't know if you've heard of people talking about cognitive dissonance, but it's like the psychological pain of like realizing you're acting not how you should. And I think a lot of people have this idea that like everybody recognizes all the contradictions in the things that they say, or they're self-aware about stuff, and kind of like a computer, if you run a code with like all kinds of contradictions, it'll just crash. And I think some people expect human beings to do that, but human beings don't. Like there are plenty of people
we
who
can't.
like
It crushes us.
Yeah.
To try to truly live without any contradictions is absolutely crushing. Like Peterson, for example, his message to truly try to live it out it's crushing. I actually think that part of what happened to Jordan Peterson crushed him, because to truly stand up straight, to truly hold your shoulders back all the time, even when you're afraid, and that's just one rule, man. Like you got to do them all, and you got to do them all the time. In order to do them all the time and not contradict yourself, it's crushing. You eventually fall short of that, inevitably. You just do. You can't be consistent. You can't.
yeah, no, you have to have mercy for yourself, and that's actually one of his rules, which I like the most, is treat yourself like you're
Yeah.
somebody you're responsible for taking care of. And it's funny, like you will take care of somebody you're responsible for a lot better than you will take care of yourself. I've totally noticed that in myself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And then the self-talk that you have, like if you pay attention to your self-talk, then you realize that like saying horrible things to yourself that you never say to anyone else.
Yeah, if you're a good person, but then there are psychopaths. they're
Yeah,
they're
kidding.
they're yeah, yeah. There's,
I think
it's
psychopaths know what they're doing. I think they are the ones that don't believe their lies. I think that's what makes you a psychopath is you have the capability of fully being able to lie, and not fall for your own lie,
mhm,
and keep going. Like I think it's like a level of like, um, you don't have that cognitive dissonance.
mhm.
Like there's a certain level of cognitive dissonance you have to have in order to make you be imperfect, so that you have empathy, so that you can love other people. Like if you think you're like if you can, I think psychopaths are actually probably the most consistent among us.
I don't know about that. It's yeah, it's difficult,
But they're
and
also like they also because they don't feel bad. I think that's part of it. Like we like feel bad and run so far in this direction trying to get away from whatever the thing we're not supposed to be doing is, that we, just end up right back there.
mhm.
Whereas I don't think psychopaths give a shit.
I, I think it does kind of go back to this thing I keep on saying: all models are wrong, some are useful,
Sure.
um, because I mean when you talk to somebody, it we we actually, I'm sure, just through this discussion we've contradicted ourselves in a bunch of ways, but um, through that dialogue and getting to know the nuance and better understanding each other, we're helping to make a model that's a little bit better. Um, like there's there's a lot I don't know about you and your wife,
Right.
and just, I mean, that's part of the reason I think this discussion is just so important, as far as us getting to know each other and kind of being a community, even though it's all over the internet. Um, and I just, I kind of wonder, like Paul Vanderklay. I don't know how much you pay attention to him. I'm sorry, your name's Sarah. Sarah. Um,
Sarah, my
but
son's Isaac. Should be easy to remember. Jacob.
Sarah, Isaac, Jacob. There you go. That is going to make it a lot easier. I'm definitely going to remember your son's name now. Um, but don't be. It'll be funny if I start calling him Ishmael, but I'll call him Isaac.
It shows in your.
But um, Paul has this thing of you can't have community online. And to some extent, I think that's true. But I also think to some extent, for some of us at least, it's just, for me at least, like, I'm such a weirdo. Like, in the city of Los Angeles, it's very hard for me to find somebody that I can discuss a lot of the same ideas I do with Chris and Chad and Michael, and you know um, so the internet, like, lets us get to know people, and which can also be bad. I mean, this may be why our society is unraveling, and maybe it would be nicer if I had to have these discussions with my local church or synagogue or whatever, um, and I couldn't be as picky as I am. So I don't know. What do you guys think about, like, online community versus offline community, and getting to know people, and how much we can truly be friends with, like, somebody I've never met either one of you. I don't know if I made a friend online like 20 years ago. She lives in Georgia. I still haven't met her. Like, it's been 20 years. you know?
Yeah. I think as far as what you're saying, like just to blip on the one little piece that you said, which maybe our like culture, society would be better if we didn't have this, where you could talk to people who are on the same page as you anywhere around the world. I think you'd feel less entitled to your opinion if you didn't have, you know, 500 people on the internet agreeing with you despite no one in your town agreeing with you. Um, but I do think that it's good. I think it's really good. I think it can be bad too, but like for me, I have a whole community on the internet of women who did IVF or are trying to have a baby and that whole thing. And I mean, some of them I talk to more than I talk to most of my friends in real
Right.
life.
Yeah.
And I know, I don't post anything politically or religion or anything on there that is potentially controversial. I don't post anything about 2020, nothing like that. I know a lot of them do, and I know that in real life we probably wouldn't get along because those would be such big hiccups.
Yeah.
Because they exist for people, they just are. But because we share something so big in common, it doesn't matter, and we're able to have these relationships, right? So I think the internet's good at creating that niche relationship, like the thing what you're into, and talking religion, and same with all of this stuff. I don't even know. Like I don't even know how to like have these type of conversations that you guys have.
Mm.
It's such a niche thing. You're probably gonna not gonna find someone in your town who is like that.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm sure there's people in the town, but are you
Especially
going to find
LA.
that person? Yeah, and so you're going to look to the internet, and in that way, I think the internet's amazing for that.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how much that kind of compartmentalizing, I'll talk to people. That was actually something I recently, I mean, within the last couple of years, I decided I was going to do less and less of as far as compartmentalizing because I actually used to do it a lot more. Um, and I think there's something that's actually unhealthy about it being that compartmentalized. Like, and I think this is actually the part where people like Luke get into what they call personalism, which is like forget all this whatever you believe stuff. It's about individual relationships of people with each other. Just and I kind of see their point. Like I see both sides. I see how it could be really good that I could talk to somebody despite my politics or despite my religion or despite anything else in my life. But at the same time, um, you do need to have mechanisms of consensus building and coming together. And I think that's what we're missing a lot of as far as what John Vervaeke calls religio, which is like things which just bind us together and we can um, have strong relationships together. So,
Well, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
And you know, you're justified in your feeling like your brother doesn't know what they're talking about because of the 500 people you talk to on the internet all agree with you. And me and Chris have had times in our marriage where we disagree with sorry where we disagree with each other on religion.
Mm-hmm.
Where like there was a time where I was really big into Christianity and Chris was into universalism. I think I'll ask him when he gets back. But he was like really into like the flower of life and all of that stuff. And then we both kind of went towards Taoism. when his dad, we both really got a lot out of that. And then I stayed towards Eastern religions after that,
Mm-hmm.
and he went towards Christianity. And then I was left, like liberal,
Mm-hmm.
and he was Republican.
Right.
And there's a lot of times where we completely disagreed on, like, we get into arguments about feminism and religion, right? And how do, like, we live in a society where no one can even get along anymore, and especially over those topics, much less stay married. And I'm just talking about, yeah. And I think that's something that we are missing in our society. And I do think it is because of the internet, because you have this many people on the internet, a lot of people that agree with you, your perspective, so you must be right and your grandma must be wrong. And therefore, you shouldn't even have to deal with her anymore, you know? And that's a really big problem. And then you have no actual friends. You're lonely because everything you do is on the internet. And I mean, that's the end, right? That's where it leads. And I think that the basis of relationship, especially marriage, like we've been married 11 years, there's a lot of periods in our marriage where we disagree on something pretty fundamental. You know, like I know the Bible talks about like being equally yoked, and we were equally yoked when we got married. And then Chris went here, and then I went over here, and then we came back, crossed paths, started going like that. You know, and it happens. And then what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to get divorced? Are you supposed to lie about that? Like, or is there something bigger that holds relationships together than just agreeing with someone on topics that you feel are important to you?
For us, like with our relationship, we don't try to change the other person, and we let the other person change, because that's what you do. You know, you change. You continue to change. You keep changing, and so we've like you're talking about universalism. Like it was more like New Age, like like New Age universalism. And,
we're so into it.
we've looked under every rock we could find, because we find this stuff fascinating. And
and that's what we have in common, is we both find it fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
well, I think, you know, if you stop changing and you stop learning, you're not really living. It seems to me, like if you're actually living, and I think, you know, if I had nothing else to learn, then why would God want me living in this life, right? I am alive so that I can hopefully be going through sanctification, be becoming a better person. I would like to think that I am a better person today than I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I'm not actually sure I am, but I would like to think.
If that's your focus, you probably are, at least on some level, right? Like a lot of people go through life not caring about that, not even trying to do that. So if you're focusing on it, I'm sure you are.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe not to the degree you want to be, but
Yeah. So I went to a wedding, my cousin's wedding last night, and I have this one uncle who several years ago, um, because of things in his life, decided that he felt like people would judge him. Um, he started having to use a wheelchair, and my grandfather used a wheelchair, and for him, like it was an incredibly embarrassing thing that his father was in a wheelchair, and then now he had to start using a wheelchair. And I just remember he came the last time we ever saw him. He came to one of my cousin's uh, weddings, and he had to use a wheelchair. He never he will not return my emails. It's been 10 years now. He just completely cut everybody off. Will not come to anything, right? And it's all in his head, right? it's I think C.S. Lewis kind of sort of said this. It's attributed to him that the gates of hell are locked from the inside. Um,
Yeah, that's yeah.
and and just yesterday, as I was sitting there at the wedding, in some ways, like, I felt alienated from everybody else because there was nobody at the wedding that I could talk to about, like, John Vervaeke and Jordan Peterson. Like, nobody
Yeah.
knows who they are, and that's what I would be talking about if I was just talking with anybody. But at the same time, I thought that was kind of kind of a self isolation, like my uncle does is isolating himself
Yeah.
because and I did, like, I was sitting there around chit chatting with people in the family and stuff, and it's human relationships are weird and strange.
Well, and like not to say anything against you, but it to think that when you go to your family's wedding that you should be talking about the things that interest you the most is kind of a selfish thing, right? Like it's kind of more, and obviously you didn't do that. Like, you thought about that, but like I think what with relationships, what's hard is one, they're just messy. They're just really messy. There's no way around it. And then two, like, you have to talk about them. Like, you have to act, like, you have to figure out what interests them,
Mm-hmm.
and then make that interesting to you.
What's that proverb? It's in Proverbs, Jacob. He who wants friends must be friendly, something like that.
I don't remember that, but it sounds like something that would be in Proverbs.
No, I'm pretty sure that's a Bible verse. I'm pretty sure Rob McMillan.
I'm sure Jason knows, and he'll put it in the comments.
It's kind
Jason
of.
knows his Bible like nobody. Yeah.
I mean, it's
Um,
kind of. I mean, it's. I mean, even if that's not in the Bible, what's in the Bible is like, do unto others as you want to have them do unto you. You know
right.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the best way to like get along with people is to just put them first and to try to think about what they want, and that's usually the best way to get along with people. I don't think the internet works this way, actually. And in that sense, I do think that the internet is like different because in real life you have like I don't have to care what you think. I can hang up.
Right.
And I like that. I like that about the internet. I like having conversations where you're telling me that there's no Trinity and I get mad if I wanted to. Like I like that. I think that's awesome. But but uh but you can't do that in real life.
So maybe the internet is more for like thought provoking conversations. Also, like for me, support than it is for actual friendships.
I mean, she's got relationships online that are like just had my baby just came prematurely and now I'm in the hospital. I don't know if I'm gonna lose this baby. And then Sarah's like, we're praying for you and whatever, just talking and like that's real.
It's real, but it's on such a different level. Like I have a friend, she had her baby. We were due around the same time at 30 weeks so early. She had her baby, and he was in the NICU for 12 weeks, I think. And they didn't know if he'd make it. Like they went through a lot, right? And I talk to her almost every day, like while she's going through that. And I've had people do the same for me through things that I was going through. And on that level, it's extremely intimate. And people know things about me on the internet that I don't know. I do not know these people other than the pictures that they post, but they know things about me, and I've confided in them and cried to them things I wouldn't even tell like anyone other than him.
I don't even know if I should say just in case, but
It's fine.
yeah, she has an Instagram that like family members aren't part of.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
all
Like,
my family
like
members.
and then she'll literally post stuff because it's a very supporting community, and she'll post like these posts are like insane, man. Like these communities, like just posting people like just crying and just falling apart basically. And then other people in the comments just supporting them and helping them. I don't know if you've done that, but you've like written stuff of like, I'm going through this right now.
I thought we were having a miscarriage one time.
Right.
And I was having a miscarriage. By the end of the day, I had an accurate diagnosis from girls on the internet that my doctor, because it was a Sunday, that my actual doctor told me on Monday. And I already knew because the girls on the internet. But then,
we find most things out faster than a doctor, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, that's the internet. And then, but then I had for months, and even still, women who are going through what I went through, and thinking they're having a miscarriage, they'll literally like message me like graphic content, graphic pictures, and ask me like, what does this look like?
What does this color blood mean?
Yeah, literally, and we'll discuss like things like that. Like, I know it's very disgusting and graphic, but it things I wouldn't like, even if me and my mom were super close. Like, I'm not gonna talk about that with my mom. You know, where I'm talking about that with strangers, and then like checking in on them. How much is it now? Like, you know, what's going on here, and things that are I would never talk about with anybody else. And then, but you have the ability to have that. And then in your darkest, this is where the internet's beautiful for me, because in your darkest moment, you aren't alone. You got multiple, like I had probably 50 women message me and tell me what they thought was going on, and that they didn't think I was miscarrying. And to have that on your worst day, that's so beautiful. And that's what the internet's good for. And but we couldn't, I don't know if we could sit in a room and have a conversation and like each other by the end of it.
There's a certain distance that the internet gives you, which allows you to kind of, first of all, there is a sort of anonymity. Like, I know that if I tell you something, Chad says a matriarchal corner of the internet. I know that if I tell Chris something, since he is so far away, he's outside of my life. I've actually been trying to do the reverse. Like, I use my own name, my full name, and like everything. Like, my cell phone number is easy to find on the internet, and my office address, like, you could find it like this in no. So I've kind of been trying to make myself the same person, because I actually think growing up, like, I was very online starting in the 90s, and I think that actually affected me a lot more than most people, because I think I was online before most people around me were. But part of what...
Do you mind?
Oh, so I'm 45.
You're 25 now?
He was 25 when he first got on the internet.
No.
Okay.
I am 45 now. In 1995, I was 18. I had just started...
So that's when you started getting on the internet, around 18. But before...
Yeah, well...
Okay, got you.
So back then, we had something before the internet called bulletin board systems. I don't know if you've even heard of those. But... So there was a kind of internet that existed before the internet. And in high school, I had access to that, and like very few, it was just the really nerdy kids who did. Like, when I went to college, my counselor told me she got an email from me, and before then, like, the only way you had access to the internet and email was if you were going to a university that had the internet, which wasn't even all universities. And I sent her an email, and she didn't really understand what was going on, because I was asking questions about going there as a high school student, and she's like, "You were the first high school student who had ever emailed me. I thought everybody got their email when they went to college." And right, so she was like, "I had no idea what to do with this high school student sending me an email." So yeah, and I one of the things that Paul Vanderklay is trying to do is kind of bring our community offline so that it is in more real life. And I think that's part of the reason why he keeps on saying, you need to go to church, you need to go to church, you need to go to an actual church. I'm not trying to make an online church. And he really dislikes the mega churches, right? He really dislikes this, he likes small churches where it's like, okay, we're in this boat. It's funny, he kind of sort of is saying, like, he kind of sort of tells, he doesn't say it, but he kind of telegraphs that Chad says, Jacob's so old, he had stones and sticks to fiddle with. But he kind of telegraphs that he's in the Christian Reformed Church and he's a member of the church that he is because that's his church and he's not going anywhere. Like, if he were to choose a church, he might decide to like be Eastern Orthodox or whatever. But as far as he's concerned, like, this is his church. And until all the members of his church decide we're going to become Eastern Orthodox, he's like, I this is my church, and we believe what, and there is a sort of self-negation there that I really admire, even though I've never had that. Like, even when I was very involved in Hasidic Judaism, like, part of the thing was I never accepted anybody else's views because it was like I always felt I have to do what God wants despite what everybody else thinks is right. And to some extent I think that was me being very egotistical and arrogant. But to some extent also, like, I don't know. Maybe like, I would do things because I thought everybody else was wrong. And I'm still this way. And to some extent it's like, well, who the hell are you? And like, you know?
I think you're like you're the type of guy who you're going to think about things more than your average person. Probably, like, you're talking about, like, well, like, you can't believe you're the worst sinner. Like, that's obviously not true. Where I think a lot of people just think that because they're told to think like that, right? And like, and so I think you think about things more deeply, which is why you feel like you need to not listen to people, right? But I think we need people. I do think we need people, and like, you're like that too. Like, you get annoyed with people pretty easily and pretty quickly.
Also, men are more like that.
Yeah, probably, where women are more like people oriented and stuff. But I don't even know if it's necessarily a bad thing, what I'm saying.
I do agree with you, though. This is why I don't care about theology. Ultimately, not to say that it doesn't have value, because I think it does, and I think it has a place. But ultimately, I think theology is for people to discuss and debate, and to forever discuss and debate, but it's actually for like kind of an elite. Like, it's really not for your average person. The average person just needs to know the story, which is why most of the Bible is just stories. And you can form your theologies to get into the technical, but most of the Bible is speaking. Most people just need to know the story. If you tell me the story, I can remember the story. I can remember that I'm David with the 5 stones. I'm pulling out of the river, and I'm the smallest of my tribe, but even if I've got the balls and just trust God, I can do it too, right? And so I think that like the story is the story is what brings it all together. It's not it isn't the theology. I personally think, and I could be wrong, but I think that if we're waiting for the church to get their theology all on the same page, we better not hold our breath. You know?
Yeah.
But I do think that we can all agree on the story already. Even you agree on with it, like your story is Chef Ben Yosef, which is like, cool man, let's rock and roll. Like that's close enough. And maybe even we need to rethink some of this and let's refine the story. Let's figure out exactly who this Jesus guy was and what he wasn't, because that'll make let's figure out what the best story is. That's how I think about it. And like, because I actually like the God, Jesus not being God, and the Trinity not being real, because I like that Jesus. I think it's more accessible that Jesus was a man. I think that's more accessible from a story perspective. I think it's easier to relate to. If Jesus knew all and was able to do all this stuff, it just becomes alienating it for you as a person. Whereas, no, I can be just like Jesus. And like, I get it. There's like people who could come back at me theologically, but from a narrative perspective, it's my opinion that that's a little bit better. But yeah, I don't think we're all. Yeah.
Okay, I have to read this comment from Chad because I've been thinking it the whole time. Like, find yourself a woman who looks at you like Sarah looks at Chris. It's like, oh my god.
But when she's mad at me, you don't want that look.
Hey,
you know what?
You get that with the good, right?
Yeah.
You do it with the bad.
Yeah, but no, honestly, it's really sweet. It's really sweet to see how you guys interact. You guys have a serious relationship that like. So you were talking about being equally yoked and changing and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, it's if you are going to live together, then and it kind of goes back to the reason why I started doing the conversations with husbands and wives is the first unit of human beings coming together in something bigger than just ourselves is in fact marriage, and learning to live with somebody else and learning to love somebody else like you do in a marriage. And so yeah, it's just really important to be able to tolerate other people. And I think successful marriages are two people who are willing to tolerate each other, and to love each other in a true unconditional way. And the one thing that I've seen from people who are married that I'm like, yeah, that marriage is gonna last forever. Divorce isn't even on their mind. Like for them, the idea, like, even as much like, even if something is completely going wrong, it's like, no, we made this commitment. We're gonna be living together. This is my spouse for life. And the people who have even if it's a possibility, it's a whole different relationship. Do you know what I mean?
It's a non-negotiable. Like, this is something that we have in our marriage is non-negotiables, and there's a lot of we've had big problems.
Mm-hmm.
Big problems.
We have big problems.
We have big problems. And then there's searching for solutions, constantly searching for solutions. And one thing that is not a solution is leaving the other person. That's a non-negotiable, right? And so I think I think the key to marriage is just commitment. If you're 100% committed to me and I'm 100% committed to you, everything else you figure out. Like Chris likes talking to you on the internet. So what am I going to do? I'm going to talk to you on the internet, right? Because that's something he values as important and I'm committed to him. And he does the same for me with things that are important to me. And I think that's why I think the only thing that actually matters is in a marriage is being committed to the other person and having that as a non-negotiable. There's divorce is off the table.
Yeah.
And that's that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the big thing. I think that people don't. I think that's why so many people have problems and can't even be in relationships anymore. Is it's kind of the same thing we're talking about with the internet culture. Like I don't like you can just press block, you can just press delete, you could just not you could just end it so quickly. Like everything, and we have a consumer attitude, and we have an entitlement attitude towards our relationships. Who get it? Oh, I'm entitled to not be treated this way or that way, or this isn't fair. And we also don't keep score. Like we don't keep score. Like I trust she's giving everything she's got, regardless of what I think she should be doing, and then she gives me the same grace, and then that's actually pretty nice. It's kind of nice. Someone kind of like, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, right? Like you let me, you let me, I don't know, you let me be who I am.
Well, and sometimes we do keep score, but
yeah,
and we literally last night said, okay, we got to clear. I think you said it. We got to clear the scoreboard, and like you don't have to be perfect. Like sometimes you keep score. Like I'm a
we're not
girl.
perfect.
The second something goes wrong, I'm gonna bring up that thing from years ago, add it to everything else that's happened, and that be the reason why he's a bad dad and a bad, you know what I mean? And then you're trapped by that. But you don't have to be perfect. You can.
Yeah.
People should just try. People should try harder. People should try People should be willing to get their hearts broken and they should be willing to get even like betrayed, and then when they get betrayed such a heavy word, but like let down, and then when they get let down, like keep trying anyways.
Well, that's where commitment comes in, because when you realize you've been keeping score and you've got a long scoreboard, right? You got a long list. Commitment makes sure you erase that and start over.
Well, for me, one of the things that I think the internet, especially blocking people on the internet, doesn't allow you to do is have a bad day. Like, sometimes I have a bad day and I act like it and I'm a jackass. And some days I have a good day and I'm really calm and actually doing all the things that I should do. And on the internet, especially with the blocking, right? People defriending and blocking each other, like it's so permanent. And in real life, like you're gonna see that person the next day, and there is a kind of reset that just doesn't exist on the internet.
Well, and the problem is that people are now starting to do that off the internet, blocking you.
Yeah.
Family, like we can't have Thanksgiving anymore because someone in your family has a different political view than you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a big problem, but
it's weird though. Like I don't know, even us saying like, well, we should be better or whatever, and then even like Vanderclay saying, well, everyone should go to church. I don't know. I think the internet is here to stay. I think that an aspect of this is like the conservative instinct that Christians have of not of wanting to say trying to stop change, and I do think that there's an inevitability to it all. Not that it has to be the only thing in your life. You don't have to just live your whole life on the internet, but there's an inevitability to some of it, in the sense that, yeah, I don't know.
There is.
The internet's like, yeah, I don't know. It's complicated. I just think that I don't know if we can go back.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't either. But there is like real life consequences from the internet.
I'm not saying they're good consequences. I'm saying they're bad consequences that might be here to stay. Is what I'm saying. Like,
Well, I think
I don't know.
we can improve how the internet functions. Like that's actually why I have my channel, right? Well, no, actually, why I have my channel is it just ended up happening. I did not expect anybody to ever pay any attention to my channel. Uh, like I was actually at the wedding. I was telling my cousin. It's really funny. My cousin, like he won a Pulitzer Prize, so he's like he's a big deal, right? At least for me, he's like my cousin, the Pulitzer Prize winner. And we were talking, and he said that
It's like a journalist award.
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah, and so he said he got a notification of one of my videos, and he came and looked at it, and I'm like, really? And like my video, the first video I made, my Genesis 1 video, has over 10,000 hits and like 500 watch hours. And it's just me going through Genesis 1 letter by letter in Hebrew. And it's 6 hours long. And I never ever imagined anybody would pay attention to it. But so people did start paying attention to it. And so part of what I'm trying to do now with like this tiny channel that I have is actually have like kind of a community. And when I was driving back from the Chicago conference, it was kind of like, you know what? If we're going to be a community, we need to include people's families, right? A real community, like if I were going to invite you to my house, there's no way I would invite Chris to my house and not invite his wife. Like, how does that work? But on the internet, like, if I'm going to have a conversation with Chris, I think a lot of people think it's weird that I'm inviting people with their spouse. And, you know, that's part of what I think how we can actually improve the internet is dealing with people in a more communal way. So, also, like, my Discord server, it's not around an idea, it's around whether or not you're one of my friends, right? My Discord server is Jacob's Ladder, and, like, the people who are moderators are all people who I've met in real life, and they're well, all but one, but like people I've met in my real life and who I trust, and people that I would like to take have a beer with. And if I'm gonna block you, it's because I don't want to be your friend, right? So I think this is part of my whole thing of bringing my whole self to the internet and not being as compartmentalized as we think is okay. And I hate to be agreeing with Luke Thompson because he's always wrong about everything, but I think he has a point with his personalism, and it's not so much about what exactly you think, right? He is a Trinitarian, and most of my friends on here are Trinitarians. God have mercy on their souls. That was a joke. And you guys froze. You guys froze like both of you looking. Oh God! But
I said we're praying for them,
yeah,
praying that they worship, they stop their
their
what's it called?
idolatry,
Their what's it called?
polytheism, and
Yeah, the
idolatry.
polytheism.
Yeah, but
Could you tell me about some of your ideas on monotheism versus the Trinity? It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. But anyways,
oh,
keep
I
going.
have
Sorry.
tons of interesting ideas, but I'm way too much to deal with in real life. Like over the internet, you can turn me off. You know, you don't have to listen to me all the time. Like there's a reason why I'm not married and like I have no real life friends. Like I'm way too much to deal with in real life. But no, I think Luke does have and as Jess says, Luke alert. I think personalism has kind of a point. Like relationships are important, and they're more important than just thoughts. At the same time, it seems to me that if you can't have a relationship with someone who has different thoughts than you do, then how is that a relationship that's more than just whether or not you believe in the Trinity or not?
Well, it's kind of like narcissistic then, because you can only have friends that are basically a reflection of you.
But a lot of churches, and I was surprised how much that is the case with Protestant churches specifically.
Yeah.
Um, I've
You
I've
got
I've heard of
so
people
many
getting
so many
excommunicated
people.
left and right. Like people on our server, several of them have been excommunicated from several churches, and like getting kicked out of synagogue is really really hard to do. Like you
Yeah,
have to, you know, um, but
it's actually a
apparently
good
like
point.
Protestants, like if you disagree on something, suddenly you're you
Going to
know
hell.
yeah.
Yeah,
You're going to hell.
I think that is probably how the West lost Christianity was that whatever that is, but that's kind of everybody's disdain towards Christianity to this day. Is this like, and this is why I was very attracted to the server. Was I like the idea of everybody arguing. I like Nate talking about Sophia, and then I like other people talking about how that's hot garbage. Like I love it all. Like, you know what I mean? Sophia is like the female spirit or whatever of God, and like, but
Wisdom, yeah.
like, but anyways, like, yeah, no, I like all that heresy because of how little it's tolerated and how much everybody needs to get on the same. It's not just the same page theologically either. Like it's all kind, like people being to say. There's people that told us that God told them we weren't supposed to be together, right?
Yeah.
Like there people who will say all kinds of things in the name of God, and then when you don't agree, that's that's when you become dead to them. And I don't know I don't know how that happened. That it's not like, it doesn't seem like it's that way anymore, but or at least it's like that less. But like that seems to be how the church lost the culture to me. And you don't see very much of it on the internet, of people being so caught up in their beliefs that they can't, like, I think that's why Jordan Peterson kind of sent up the flare for everyone, because everyone's like, oh, like these are open-minded discussions, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So Chad says, hilarious. Chris almost accidentally got converted by Jacob's ideas. I don't know about that. And Sarah just laughs at Jacob's silly ideas. Sounds like getting kicked out of AA. Good luck. Yeah, getting kicked out of getting kicked out of a synagogue is pretty difficult to do. But So I've kept you guys for an hour and a half, and while I can do 5 hour live streams because I have no life, you guys actually have a baby and like a real life. So what did you guys want to talk about? Was there anything you wanted to bring up? Anything, you know? Um,
Hmm.
I wasn't asking you, Chris. I was asking Sarah. You talk all the time, Chris.
I am the head of the household.
Are you? Are you really?
What did you always say? The key to marriage is convincing the other person
That they're in charge.
that they're in charge. He's the head of the household.
One of my favorite jokes is this couple is married for 50 years, and somebody asks them, "So how did you guys? What's the secret to your success?" And the man says, "Oh, we decided really early on. I make the big decisions. She makes the small decisions." I decide who we're going to vote for president, if we're going to support the war, all the important stuff. And she gets to decide where we're going to live and where the kids go to school and all the small
way
stuff.
more important.
I don't
He just
actually,
votes?
like,
That's it. He votes.
I don't actually. I think I don't have a problem with that. Like, I was talking to a girl the other, like, it was a while back during the primary elections, and she was saying, like, she's like, I just voted for who my husband told me to. I just trust his opinion. I know he does his research, and I don't have time to do the research. So I
Let's
just
talk.
voted for who he said.
Let's talk about women submitting.
My,
So we talk about this all the time, and we talk about how like feminism is BS and it's absolutely toxic, and like obviously the word submitting is just so. It's just like I don't know. We don't feel the way we felt about that word, but I also do think that women actually just they want a man who will take charge and make them feel like they don't have to worry about it. And I actually think that that's something that's sexy. And we're losing that. We're losing that entire. Yeah, like Lily. Yeah, talk about Lily. Lily's our Muslim friend.
Lily's one of my best
She's from
friends.
Iran.
She's from Iran. She was married to a guy who did everything. He cooked, he cleaned, she drove. But aside from driving and she had her job at the mall, she didn't do anything to the point that she has her nails grown out so long that she can't open a sliding glass door. And she's divorced now because he was taking advantage of her trustingness, and he was just not a good guy. But there was a day where like I was opening her sliding glass door in her house that she lives in by herself, and I was like, I didn't tell her this, but I was thinking in my head, like, at some point you gotta clip the nails because you gotta be able to open up the door. So that like gives you a little bit about Lily, right?
She's just a like.
She's
So
helpful.
Helpless. She is a absolute damsel in distress. Like grew up Muslim. Men always did everything for her, and she doesn't know anything else and can't see it any other way.
We had a female manager at the job we worked at, and we didn't like her. And she's like, "This is why women cannot be managers." They can't. She's very, like she won't carry her water up to her apartment. She lives alone, and she'll just find a man who will. There will always be a man who will carry her water. And she buys waters every time she goes to the grocery store. So she gets proposed to once a month.
sounds like a Persian princess. Sounds like a Persian princess. I don't know if you guys knew that I'm actually Persian.
Oh,
Okay.
no way.
No.
Yeah.
She's Iranian.
I was born in Iran.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty good.
Okay.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. No, it's not. I feel so sorry for anybody born in Iran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she talks too lousy Ron.
What's the capital? Tehran?
Tehran, yeah.
Yeah. She's from Tehran, and
Yeah.
I think she's going back now.
I was at her house one day, her apartment, excuse me, and she didn't have any furniture. She moved back to America by herself, and some guy was there, and he had just bought her all this furniture and was furnishing her house. And she's like, "No, don't do it! Don't furnish my house!" And he's like, "I'm going to furnish your house." And then like a week later, he proposes to her. This just becomes like a revolving.
But she's so used to people proposing all the time that it's like
She
that's
must
her
be
life.
absolutely drop dead gorgeous.
She's 39.
She's pretty.
She's super pretty. But
Do you know what it is, though, man? It's her femininity.
yes,
She's a damsel in distress, and she's like a black hole of drawing masculinity out of men and towards her. Because like Theo Vaughn has this funny joke where he said
to be rescued all the time.
Theo Vaughn has this funny joke where he says like finding a girl or finding a man isn't that hard, ladies. It's not that hard. Just go out on the street with a bouquet of flowers and look lost. Someone will come save you.
Yeah.
And it's women don't. I think that like feminism is so toxic because it's female empowerment bullshit that women do not.
I took a poll because I have my Instagram, right, where I have like a couple thousand women on there, and they're all getting pregnant, having babies. Now most of us have had babies, and I took a poll, and I said, who wants to be a stay-at-home mom? If you could, in a perfect world, would you be a stay-at-home mom? And I have the numbers here. It was, I'm going to pull it up because it is kind of.
And let's guess. What would you guess? Like
Yeah.
90+%.
Say it again.
90%.
9%. They what? Want to stay home or want to
Yeah.
be out?
No, want to stay home. Yeah.
So you have like culturally we're in this time where like the perception would be like everybody's wanting to be out there, working still and focusing on their careers and stuff. She's gonna pull it up here.
So let me see the last one I did, the one I'm pulling up here. So this might not be the last one, but it's just the one I have right now. Let me just look really quick to see if we're just gonna go with it, okay? So the last one I have on here, how many women would want to be a stay-at-home mom if they could? So the answers were you'd want to stay at home, or you'd want to work, or you want to work part-time or very little. 104 women said they wanted to work. They didn't want to work at all, right? 19 said they wanted to work, and 78 said they wanted to work for part-time and very little.
How many people is it total?
I don't know.
It's like 200.
Yeah, something like 200.
Yeah.
We did the math, but yeah, you said 90%.
Well, with the
you're actually
part-time
pretty much
thing.
there.
Yeah, with the part-time
pretty
thing.
much 90%.
And then out of the women, and then
Between working a little bit, which by the way, if you work a little bit, you're not really working.
you're not supporting.
Like you're it's more of a hobby.
You have a career.
Like you can't carry a load like
Right.
of all the bills on a part time. So if you're part time, you're not. It's more to get out of the house. Like you can't.
Right.
There's no like just being real. Like there's nobody who's carrying the family on a party or contributing that much. It's not to be like whatever, but like
It's not really a
it's just
career,
how the world is. You have to be fully dedicated to really do well, and so maybe they want to work a little bit, but there's only I think so 20 people out of 200 said no, which is what you said, 10%. So
Yeah.
Well, part
That's not the
of
perception,
what Jordan Peterson
right?
keeps on. I'm sorry, you guys keep on freezing. So, okay, you're back. Part of what Jordan Peterson says is the more you make things exactly the same for men and women, actually what happens is they become more and more biologically grounded in how they act. Like actually in Iran, like a woman who goes to college in Iran or Pakistan, like they end up going into engineering because their father chooses their career for them, right? And but
Really,
whereas
the
Yes,
women,
yes, right.
if
my church friend's an engineer.
yeah, I mean, whereas if they're choosing for themselves, like there's a lot of women who become doctors because they really like working with people and stuff like that, whereas they don't like becoming an engineer because women, unlike men, tend to be more interested in people and men tend to be more interested in things. And so when you make things more equal societally, right? Socially and through our mores, then and cultural stuff, then you're going to end up actually men and women being more unalike than when you have a culture that's like kind of forcing certain things on people. And that, yes, it is kind of paradoxical, but it also makes a lot of sense.
Think about like all men are attracted to my friend because she holds her flower and she looks lost, right? And we tell women that they want a career and they do everything in their life set it up for that career and they have a baby and all of a sudden they can't imagine leaving that baby to go to work, but they have to because they've set up their entire life based off of this thing that they've been told. And I find that to be very problematic in society right now because we are telling men and women that they're the same and that they don't want these things, but they do. Like
I have seen so many women who dedicated their life towards a career and were incredibly successful. And then at age 40, like even Susan Estridge, I don't know if you know who she is, but she's kind of famous. She was the first woman to run a presidential campaign. She was a political pundit that was more. So when I went to law school, she was a huge name, and she taught at my law school, and she was like this big time feminist, and I took like gender law with her, and one of the things she talked about was how when she was running the Democratic National Committee convention for I think it was the '88, it was the Dukakis election, and she was at the same time undergoing hormone therapy in order to do IVF, and
Yep.
it was like because she was
as
in
a single woman, right?
well, no, she was married,
Oh, okay.
but she had waited so long that it's a lot harder when you're older to have a child, and that was one of the things she was actually telling. Most of the people taking the class were women, and and they were women at USC Law School, which they're gonna be, if they want, they're probably gonna be successful. And she's like, you know what? I talked to a lot of my former students, and they're not happy having gotten that top law career because they are alone and don't have kids and stuff like that. And so it really bothers me, I think, how much we lie to people.
Yeah, and people, we tell women that they need to go to school, get their career, figure their life out first, then they can get married and then they can have kids. And then they say, you have plenty of time, don't worry. Well, people used to always tell me I have plenty of time, don't worry. And I'm telling you, overnight, there's like a shift. And then everyone who said you have plenty of time, don't worry, all of a sudden people are like, oh wow, do you want to have kids? You're kind of running out of time.
Yeah.
And we think that like women can just like figure this out at like 35, where if you're in like the infertility world, you're considered geriatric, which basically means you're old.
How many
And
people?
it's harder for you to have pregnancy.
How many women are infertile or deal with infertility?
1 out of 8, but it's gravitating towards 1 out of 7 now. In some countries, it is
It's
1 out of 7.
continuing to go up. So,
Yeah.
like, it's something that people like, especially women or whatever. Like, actually, we can't be conscious enough of it. Like,
But
you need to. It has to be something about in your 20s.
and men are also attracted to women in their 20s.
Right.
So when you hit in your 30s, and I'm more picky in my 30s. Like, I'm way more picky. I don't know if I would have.
She tries to tell me what to do a lot more.
Yeah, well, I'm way more. I don't know. I'm just, as a woman, I'm more picky in my 30s, and you don't want to be so picky. Like you're gonna, like, women are so picky now that they don't have anybody, like that. And then they're getting sperm donors. Like I have girls on my account who are doing the sperm donor single mom thing, and I just don't think it's a good idea to wait until you're in your 30s for multiple reasons. You are most fertile when you're in your 20s. Men are more attracted to you because you're more fertile in your 20s. So I think it is good to get married in your 20s and to have babies in your 20s, and you can figure out a career. My friend, she started having her kids at 24, and her plan is that she's got an idea of what her career is going to be after the kids are old enough. That's a great plan. You can actually kind of have the best of both worlds then. But to tell women that they want all these things that they don't actually want is
well, it's telling women you can have everything, and you can't have everything.
Yeah.
And you will most likely not be happy living the life of a man, and for some reason it's become this idea that the optimal life is the life that a man lives, and it's like,
which is the most sexist thing of all.
I think that it's because of a combination of the feminization of men and the propaganda that's put towards women and making them feel like they can't trust men or that they shouldn't trust men. It's women are perceiving men as either untrustful or as weak. And I think that when women perceive men as weak, that's on the man. The man has to work on that. The man has to not be weak. But when the woman perceives him as untrustworthy, that's on the woman. And the woman has to trust the man. And that's why the woman has to submit. Like, it's a terrible word. The woman, but I don't know why we don't like the word, but like, the woman needs to trust. The woman just needs to trust the man. It's okay to trust.
I have to tell you, like, the Jewish teaching of it is not like this at all, because we have the example of God says to Abraham, listen to Sarah, listen to Sarah, your wife. And so the idea is that there are different domains, and regarding things in the home, the woman is like the queen of her castle, and outside the home, the man is kind of representative of the family. So, like, in a Jewish context, the basic ethic is, for example, if you as a man want to change your career, and it would affect your home life, as in you wouldn't be home as much, your wife gets an absolute veto in Jewish law. Like, or if she wants to live somewhere and you want to live somewhere else, basically she gets to make the decision, you don't.
So if you want to switch careers, you get to make the decision, she doesn't. And if she wants to live somewhere else,
if you want to switch careers and your career would be something that you wouldn't be like, if the man wants to switch his career and it's something that would require him to travel and not be home, she gets a veto. She gets to say no.
Got you. Because it affects the home.
Yeah.
Got you.
Because she has certain rights, which include her husband being there for her, and actually conjugal rights,
Yeah.
right? If you don't perform, you're actually violating the marriage contract. We have a marriage contract. Like, she gets her rights, and if you're not giving her what she deserves, she can take you to actually a rabbinic court.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that uh, I think that me and Chris have talked about this too. Like, I do think that, submission to your partner is an important thing. I do think that women's roles are different than men, and I think my role is in the house, and that's where I want my role to be. And when it comes to certain things that are not a part of my role, submission is great because he knows what he's talking about because he's been doing it. He's been outside of the house doing those things. I do think that our society's gone really into this whole feminism thing, but now you're seeing kind of it go back out, and we're talking, like, there's a lot of people talking about submission and marriage, and we talked about this the other day, like it's a contract that has no, like, one thing that me and Chris can talk about is submission, and then we can get in a fight because both of our wills are butting heads, and I may win that fight, right? Like, so what I find interesting these days is how the topic of marriage has lost the magic, and you're trying, like, it's like we're trying to backtrack, but we're getting lost.
I think when we stop believing in God, we stop believing in love.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with you, because we kind of started thinking only things that are material, only things that are physical actually matter, and these ideals like love and commitment and things that are spiritual, just they're fake.
Yeah, like I.
But you said the most important part, and then you're talking that you went from, like, talking about women don't need a man, and men don't need women, to women want a rich man, and men want a young woman, right? Like, and you're still missing it. Like, you're still missing the mark. You're a little closer. At least you're going with, like, biological things that are true, and I do believe in those things, but you're missing it. Like, why can, like, two high school kids back in the 50s fall in love, be married at 16, and can't live without one another when one of them dies at 90, right? Like, why is that the case? That neither one of those worldviews fit into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Chad says, I blame Nintendo. I have to agree with that. I have kept you guys for 2 hours. I would keep you for as long as you'll stay, but I'll let you go whenever you guys want. So you tell me.
I want to bring up one point, and then we should go.
Yeah, I would say about 20 more minutes probably.
Okay. Yeah, he's probably about to wake up to speed anyways.
At 11:30, but I've got things to do that I gotta do.
I want to bring this up because it's controversial, which makes it fun, and I've never heard anybody else say it before. But I can make an argument right now that Christianity is inherently sexist, and I don't know if it actually can be refuted. Christianity doesn't really have any female heroes. There was one deity of Sophia that was very, very much suppressed in Christianity. The only only female that is appreciated or whatever is the Mother Mary, which then means that you're looking at women's only role, the only thing that's redeemable or whatever about a woman is her ability to have a child. And I have wondered if like there is like this sliver of truth somewhere in Christianity. Christianity is patriarchal and oppressive to women. I have wondered if there is somewhere in it. And because we've gone to lots of churches, we've seen like scandals and stuff like that, inappropriate stuff, people covering for those leaders, and I've wondered if there is. I've wondered if there's something there, because even like when I was talking about the word submit and it was coming out of my mouth, I'm like, something about it doesn't feel right when I say it, and then you say, well, we don't even have the concept, and it's like I wonder if there's something slightly off about Christianity. So what do you think, Jacob, the Jew?
So, yeah, I mean, it's complicated. It is definitely complicated. I actually had a very good discussion with Cassidy on her channel about this. So, I will refer people to that. One thing I would say is you have to distinguish between sexist, as in acknowledging what I would say is the fact that men and women are different, and that's just normal, and we actually need men and women to be different. That's how God, it is not only how God created it. So I'm not pushing the naturalistic fallacy, as in that's how it is, so that's how it should be. But actually, that's how it should be, because I think spiritually it makes sense that we have this dichotomy in people, and two very different people coming together. So I would say that Judaism, Abrahamic religion, and everything that comes out of it is necessarily sexist in the idea that there is a male and there's a female and they're different and they're complementary, and the whole complementarian thing. So I will say I am unapologetically sexist, and I am. And when I was living an ultra-Orthodox Jewish life,
just to make sure I understand, is your sexism based in biology? You're saying,
not.
but
Well, I don't want to
you're talking about the distinct differences between men and women. Is that it, or are you going further than that?
Well, I don't want to be guilty of the naturalistic fallacy that what is what should be. And yes, there's an obvious physical difference between men and women biologically, which I think is undeniable. Also psychological. Women are psychologically different than men, and I don't even understand how somebody could deny that. But the question comes in the normative, right? Not just what is, but what ought to be. And I would say spiritually, what Genesis teaches is that there is a reason why men and women should be different. And I think that in the theological hierarchy, there is an important difference between men and women that should be retained. That is completely different from the idea that men are somehow superior to women. And I actually, going back to my my little rant against Paul of Tarsus, I actually think where Christianity becomes patriarchal, where it...
So you accept that critique that Christianity is patriarchal, like in
Pauline Christianity.
Huh?
I would say Pauline. I don't think Jesus taught. I think
Right.
Jesus taught Judaism, and yeah, I'm not a fan of Paul. I think the fundamental mistake that Paul made is that sentence where he says there is no Jew or Greek, um, man or woman, um, slave or free in Christ Jesus. I think that's obviously wrong, and I think where it's most obviously wrong is where he says there's no man or woman. Because when you try to get rid of the difference between male and female, and I think also when you try to get rid of nationalities, right? You different roles and how we are different from each other, and recognizing that God created us different, right? That's theologically, I believe God created us different. So I do believe that there is a difference between male and female that's important and needs to exist and is spiritually imperative and a good thing. And that's not the naturalistic fallacy. That's not just saying what is what should be. Uh, it is true that men and women are different, but I think we actually need to recognize the necessity for men and women to be different. And that's what our goes against the grain of Christianity, even at a deeper level than, because this concept of equality is, oh, equality means being the same. There's no man or woman in Christ Jesus. And I think if there's no man or woman, right, it's completely different if you're saying God loves men and God loves women and God loves Jews and God loves Greeks and God loves slaves and God loves the free. But that's because God is the creator of everything. And again, part of the problem goes back to Paul and his dualism of having this, I would say, second god of Satan, who is kind of like a creator. Like
he says Satan is the fourth member of his Trinity.
It like this idea that things exist which were not created by God is itself blasphemy, I believe. So it's a very different way of looking at things. And so I do believe there's an inherent problem in Christianity, but I have to say I don't think that inherent problem is in Jesus' teachings, because I believe Jesus was just teaching Judaism. I believe that basically everything that's wrong in Christianity came about because of Paul. And that's my little rant.
Yeah, no, I've noticed whenever I have my issues, when I talk to people about stuff, this is also partially why I'm more interested in like more instinctual aspects of religion than theological ones, because it'll be stuff I notice, like stuff I've literally ran into things a lot of the times with people where the argument I'm making will conflict with something that Paul says. I noticed that. Like, I don't know, it's interesting. He wrote a lot.
He did. He wrote a large part of, and it's not just that he wrote a large part of the New Testament, but a lot of the New Testament was written after Paul. So even the parts that he didn't write were in fact affected by his theology. And I think when you look beyond what the theology that Christianity inserted um, into the teachings of Jesus, again, like I have this belief that Jesus was just teaching Judaism. And I have a particular belief of Judaism that I personally have, which, this is what I get into all kinds of debates with Michael about. But I think we need to have these discussions, and I think actually part of what has been the problem within Protestantism, even more so than Christianity in general, is the unwillingness to actually have a discussion.
I feel like I feel like I feel like there's an aspect of the whole like critique of the West that the postmoderns are making, that like our liberals thing are making. They're saying that like Christianity is oppressive. I think there's something true there. I don't know what it is, and actually, I think part of it might be saying that Jesus is God, because the second that you say Jesus is God, you're basically you're basically claiming more authority than you actually have, and then you inevitably will become more oppressive. You know what I mean?
Well,
So if our view
part
of
part of the
Jesus is
problem with Jesus being God is Jesus didn't get married, and Jesus was born of a virgin, right? And so even if you're going to like make the Virgin Mary some secondary god, right? Um, it 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 doesn't have that, in Judaism, and it's been particularly hard for me as a person who never got married. In Judaism, we very clearly say that a human being is a couple, is a married man and wife, and you're not a full human being until you are married, and you're not in the image of God until you are married, and that's something that's absolutely different from Christianity, and part of that is the idea that Jesus could fulfill the law, could be the perfect human being, could live the perfect story without being a husband, a father, and even a son,
very
because he
interesting.
wasn't a real son.
Very
And
interesting.
I've heard you say oh,
Good.
We you cut
Argument.
out. You
I,
heard me say.
yeah, I just said that's a good argument against Jesus being like the Messiah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's
'Cause that's
that's
a
like the number
yeah.
one thing is, if you're saying that Jesus fulfilled the law, the first commandment in Genesis is be fruitful and multiply. So how as a man who did not get married and have children could he have fulfilled and been the perfection of the human life without having been a husband and a father?
Interesting. That's really interesting.
there's something that you said last time we talked. I'm trying to remember it, but I can't remember it. But basically, like, um, yeah, this point you're making about like the mother, like, yeah, Jesus was not a mother. Like, God is all.
Yeah.
God is all,
So that's
and
so
that does
yeah.
seem to resolve like some of the like kind of um in incongruency that I think Christianity does have a gender incongruency. I think that I do wonder if men are actually placed too high because of how great Jesus was and how the only other women we can think of are his mom and a whore. You know, like I think
Well,
I
Jonathan Pajot keeps on saying that Jesus is the greatest story. And for me, I think that's a huge mistake because when Christians look through the Old Testament, one thing they do is they look for Jesus in every story. And it's like, no, you're
Yeah.
turning you cut out.
I was just saying, Chris kind of told me a little bit about what you said about this, and I think about it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
like
yeah, I want to
every
hear it. I want to
story
hear it.
becomes the story of Jesus, and it's like, no, the Bible actually has lots of stories in it, and there isn't a one perfect story because it's bigger than just one story and one life and one thing. You have David, you have Abraham, you have Isaac, you have Joseph, and they live very different lives because we live very different lives. And if if you turn Jesus into that idol, that one thing that everything has to be about, then you're just reducing the Bible to like one story, and it makes no sense.
Interesting.
What do you think? This is just another thing that I notice in churches. I don't know if, yeah, I think all churches are, I think this is universal, is the power of the name of Jesus. And there's this, I analyze it from like the Vervaeke perspectives of like, I think part of it is, I think it's a way of honestly, if as long as we're all talking about the same thing, even if it's arbitrary in some sense, but as long as we're all focusing our attention on the same thing, I think that I sometimes I wonder if that's where the power is. What do you think about that? Because the insistence in Christianity is that in the name of Jesus, you can literally perform miracles. That it's literally like do you reject that notion? What do you think?
Okay, so I think part of the problem here is a translation problem, because in Hebrew, in the name of, right, doing something in the name of, like, names have a different understanding in the Hebrew, and so I think people oftentimes in translation misunderstand, and there is a huge problem in turning it into a sort of magic formula, right? In the name of Jesus, and like you get the Kenneth Copeland types who are like, in the name of Jesus, I heal you. And
And people
supposedly
get
that's.
healed. People do get healed though. Like that's the thing is people do get healed, and so it's not as simple as that it works or doesn't work. But go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
But even if it worked 100% of the time, right? How is that different from a magic spell, right? You're wielding God, right?
Well, I
You're no
sometimes.
longer you're
Go ahead.
no longer praying to God and asking for what you believe is best, and recognizing that we as human beings do not command God, but uh, desire for God's will to be done, right? You are instead wielding God, which I think is a huge problem.
This is the
Um,
Christian thing, is that you can wield God to me. Like I think that I don't know if there's any other religion that has ever taught that you could wield God. I think that that's
I think
actually,
that's actually very common. I don't think it's
you do.
particularly Christian.
Where,
I
like
think
paganism?
I see it among Jews as well. I see it among magic and superstition. So I
Yeah.
the difference between magic and a miracle is when you ask God and He changes the world, and magic is when you command God that He change the world, and that's a very fine distinction that I think is lost on a lot of people, but it's an important distinction.
Okay. Okay. That's something to think about. Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. This name, like the name of Jesus, the name of Jesus, the name of Jesus. It's
Magic
very
is a
very much a
human
focus.
universal.
Huh?
Magic is a human universal. Like, there's
Sure.
actually a
Yeah.
list of human universals that I think is really interesting to read, and one of them is magic. Like
Send that to me.
um, Google it. It's a list of human universals.
List of
Uh, yeah, I'll try to find it.
universal
And
beliefs.
no, things that every society we've ever encountered has a concept for. Like, so they did a linguistic analysis, and every single language has. I think it may have even been Steven Pinker who he may have made it famous, or he may have been the one who went through and did it. But like that, every single society we know of has certain things they have words for, like man and woman, right? And magic is one of those things.
Oh, I wonder why.
Well, I think it's a real spiritual danger. I think that's actually one of the biggest spiritual dangers, and that's why the Bible is so against magic and superstition. It's like, so where does magic end and faith begin? And it's a very fine line, and I think it's very easy for people to fall on the wrong side of that line. And I think it's actually like the dividing line between good and evil is whether you're willing to accept God's will or whether you want to impose your will on God.
Yeah, yeah, that's that. We should talk about that some other time because I think that's a very interesting conversation, and I have a lot of thoughts about that because I had an interesting talk with what's that dude's name? I think he literally considers himself a wizard. Um, what's that dude's name? Oh God, he's got the shaved head. Well, sometimes he has his hair grown out. He used to be sorting myself out, and do you know who I'm talking about?
Sorting myself out. I know that channel. I forget.
I can't remember his name right now. But anyways, he talks about magic, and his
Oh, right. Yeah, what's
I
his
can't remember
name?
his name.
Yeah, and he has a huge channel, like 32,000
Yeah,
subscribers. Yeah, that's Mercury Black.
that's right. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
he and we had an interesting conversation about that. But we should go, man.
You have to go. Your wife is falling asleep. It was
Yeah.
great speaking to you. You are always welcome on here. It would be great to speak to you again. And if I have to, I'll speak to Chris again as well.
Thanks for having me on here.
Good
You can
night.
see how smart she is.
Much smarter than you are, that's for sure.
That's right. That's right.
I agree.
I like him.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, so I am trying very, very hard to ignore that person who uh, is not a real person in the chat. If people want to discuss anything we discussed, anybody wants to come on to discuss the discussion, if you know me, you can DM me, and I will send you a link. Otherwise, I am in a few minutes probably going to log off, and I may, in fact, make some more videos before I go home because there's been a lot of stuff I've been trying to think through recently. Dankeschön, Chad. Jess is laughing at us. And here is actually a link to the list of human universals we spoke about. the list of universals is actually quite interesting.